The thing about humiliation is that it doesn't hit you like a punch. It's quieter, sharper, like the sting of ice water running down the back of your neck, while everyone else pretends they don't notice. Ethan Lewis had felt that sting before. So had his wife, Mariah. They just never expected to feel it here, not in the middle of Manhattan, at a restaurant so relentlessly praised for its modern inclusivity that it was practically a hashtag. The lobby smelled faintly of rosemary and pan-seared lamb. Glass walls caught the amber light of the setting sun, reflecting it in a way that made everything look richer, softer. But for the Lewises, the warmth ended at the front podium. The host, a pale young man with the kind of perfect posture that screamed, "I'm majored in hospitality," didn't even look up from his iPad when Ethan gave his name. Lewis. Party of four. Ethan repeated, gently enunciating, the way you might with someone who didn't quite hear you the first time. The host finally glanced up, his smile thin and perfunctory. "Oh, right. I'm afraid we're, fully booked tonight." His gaze flicked over Ethan's tailored suit, Mariah's dress, the polished shoes of their kids, and yet, somehow, he looked right through them. "That's odd," Mariah said, her voice level but edged. "We have a confirmed reservation. 6:30. Under Ethan Lewis. Your system should, sir, ma'am." The host cut in, his tone crisp now. "There must have been a mistake. We don't have anything available." He angled the iPad screen away from them, as if it contained the nuclear codes. From behind, a couple, both white, both mid-40s, breezed in without so much as a hello. The host's smile suddenly blossomed like springtime. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Carter. Right this way," he chirped, sweeping them toward a candlelit table by the window. Ethan's jaw tightened. He caught his son, Jordan, watching not with surprise, but with that resigned look kids get when they've seen this dance before. His daughter, Layla, just stared at the floor, tracing patterns in the marble with her eyes. It wasn't the first time, but tonight was different. The Lewises weren't just here for dinner. They were here for work. For the past 3 years, Ethan and Mariah had been quietly reviewing restaurants for the New York Ledger, the city's most read dining column. They wrote under pseudonyms, never using their real names, never revealing their faces. It was the only way to get the truth, to see how restaurants treated people when they thought no one was watching. And right now, standing in that halo of golden light and thinly veiled disdain, Ethan knew exactly what kind of truth they were about to uncover. The restaurant, Benedict's, was the kind of place where a single plate could cost as much as a week's groceries. Critics adored it. Celebrities flocked to it. And according to its glowing press releases, it was a celebration of global culture through cuisine, which made the irony sting even more. Mariah reached for Ethan's hand, not in a gesture of comfort, but solidarity. "We'll wait for the manager," she said to the host, her voice cool as glass. The host hesitated, his fingers tapping the iPad nervously. "He's busy at the moment." "I don't think, then we'll wait," Ethan said. They stood there, the four of them, as servers glided past carrying plates of truffle pasta and champagne flutes. The dining room hummed with laughter, forks clinking against porcelain. But near the podium, the air was heavier. 10 minutes passed. 15. Finally, a tall man in a dark blazer emerged from the dining room. His expression was all managerial charm until his eyes landed on the Lewises. The warmth flickered, just for a second. "I'm Daniel," he said, extending a hand. "What seems to be the problem?" Ethan explained. Daniel listened, nodding occasionally, his polite smile never quite reaching his eyes. When Ethan finished, the manager's tone was smooth, rehearsed. "I'm terribly sorry for the inconvenience, but as my host mentioned, we're fully booked." "I wish we could, Daniel," Mariah interrupted, her voice velvet sharp. "We made this reservation 3 weeks ago." "Are you saying your system simply lost it?" A muscle twitched in Daniel's jaw. "As I said, I'm sorry, but..." Ethan pulled a phone from his jacket pocket, scrolling to an email confirmation. 6:30. For guests. Confirmed by your reservations desk. "Are you saying this isn't valid?" The manager's eyes flicked to the phone screen and then away. "I'll look into it," he said, but his voice had lost its conviction. From the corner of his eye, Ethan saw the Carters, the couple who'd been seated moments earlier sipping wine at their prime table. He also saw 3 other tables sitting empty. Mariah noticed too. "Those tables there," she said lightly. "Reserved as well?" Daniel hesitated. "Yes, for later parties." Uh-huh. Mariah's smile was thin enough to cut glass. And then came the shift. It wasn't loud. There was no shouting, no dramatic scene. But you could feel it the way Daniel's tone changed, the subtle glances between him and the host, the awareness that this wasn't going to be brushed off. Because what Daniel didn't know, what no one in that restaurant knew, was that by this time tomorrow, the New York Ledger would be running a full review of Benedict's. And it wouldn't be about the food. Daniel's smile didn't falter, but the way his fingers gripped the edge of the podium told another story. "Let me see what I can do," he said, disappearing into the dining room with quick, measured steps. The host avoided their eyes now, pretending to be deeply fascinated by the iPad screen. Every so often, he'd glance at the Lewises, as though trying to calculate how much longer they'd stand there before leaving in quiet defeat. But the Lewises weren't going anywhere. Jordan shifted his weight from one foot to the other, muttering, "We could just eat somewhere else, Dad." Ethan's gaze stayed fixed on the empty tables beyond the glass partition. "And let them get away with this?" His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "Not tonight." Mariah glanced at their daughter. Layla was fiddling with the strap of her purse, eyes downcast, trying to disappear into herself. Mariah knew that look. She'd worn it often enough when she was Layla's age, back in Atlanta, when store clerks would follow her around just to make sure she didn't take anything. "No, baby," Mariah said softly. "Sometimes you have to stand in the discomfort." When Daniel returned, his expression had been recalibrated to polite regret. "Good news," he said, as if announcing a lottery win. "We've had a last-minute cancellation. We can seat you in the lounge." The lounge was a narrow alcove near the kitchen, half hidden from the main dining room. The hum of conversation there was replaced by the metallic clatter of pots, the occasional shout from a chef, and the whoosh of the dishwasher. "We'll take the table we reserved," Ethan said evenly. Daniel's smile froze. "As I mentioned, you have 3 open tables in the main room," Ethan said, not raising his voice but not backing down either. "We're happy to take one." Daniel's polite veneer cracked just enough for a flicker of irritation to show. "Sir, those tables are reserved for regulars." Jordan looked up, eyes narrowing. "So you're saying we're not regular enough?" The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Mariah broke the silence. "You know what? We'll take the lounge table." Her voice was almost cheerful, but her eyes told Ethan everything play along for now. Daniel led them to the alcove, where a small table was set against the wall. The seating was cramped, the lighting dimmer, the tablecloth slightly stained near the edge. They sat. Menus were placed in front of them without ceremony. The server, a young woman with tired eyes, asked if they'd like water. "Still, please," Ethan said, "and we'll need a wine list." As soon as the server walked away, Mariah pulled out her phone, slipping it under the menu so it wasn't obvious. "Photos," she whispered. "Angles, lighting, timestamp." Ethan adjusted the position of his menu, pretending to read while his own phone camera caught the view. The stain on the tablecloth, the exposed view of the swinging kitchen doors, the half-empty dining room just beyond. Layla raised an eyebrow. "You guys are going full detective mode, huh?" "Full truth mode," Ethan corrected. "Big difference." Their server returned with the wine list, her gaze flitting between them and the main dining room like she knew something wasn't right. She poured the water, but in her rush, a few drops splashed onto the table. She apologized quickly, but Ethan could tell she was more nervous than careless. When she left, Jordan leaned forward. "Why didn't we just tell them who we are?" "Would have shut them up instantly." Ethan shook his head. "And ruined the point of all this. If we walk in with our names, they treat us like royalty, but that's not how they treat everybody. We need the truth they give strangers." The first course arrived, an artfully arranged plate of beet carpaccio. The colors were vibrant, but the beets were unevenly sliced, the edges drying from sitting too long. Ethan took photos from multiple angles before tasting. Mariah's appetizer, a small portion of tuna tartare, was similarly underwhelming. Too much soy, not enough citrus. She made a few notes in the leather-bound notebook she kept in her purse, her handwriting neat and methodical. Halfway through their appetizers, Daniel reappeared, all polished charm. "Everything to your liking." Ethan smiled faintly. "We'll let you know in the review." It was subtle, but Daniel's posture stiffened. "Review?" "That's right," Mariah said lightly, taking another bite of tartare. "We're writers. For the New York Ledger. You've probably heard of it." Daniel's eyes darted between them, as if recalibrating everything he'd just done in the past half hour. I wasn't aware. Had I known? That's the point, Ethan interrupted. You weren't supposed to know. For the first time, Daniel's voice lost its steady polish. I assure you, there's been no what. Mariah's tone was still calm, but her gaze was unflinching. No bias? No prioritizing certain patrons over others? No treating us like a mistake that walked in off the street. Daniel opened his mouth, closed it again, then muttered something about checking on their entrees before disappearing. In the main dining room, the Carters were halfway through their meal. A server brought them a complimentary bottle of champagne. Ethan didn't miss the way Daniel lingered at their table, laughing and chatting. Jordan followed his father's gaze. Wonder if they got fully booked, too. Mariah smiled without humor. I'm sure they were miraculously accommodated. The entrees arrived with more care than the appetizers. Ethan's filet mignon was cooked to temperature, but the plating looked rushed. Mariah's sea base was perfectly seared, yet served lukewarm. They ate, they noted, they photographed. And through it all, the reality of what had happened at the podium earlier sat between them like a fifth guest. Because it wasn't just about bad service. It was about the assumption, the quiet, poisonous assumption that they didn't belong. After dessert, a passable creme brulee and an oversweet chocolate torte, Ethan asked for the check. It arrived in a leather folder, along with a handwritten note from Daniel. I hope we can make it up to you next time. Mariah read it, then slid it back into the folder. Oh, you will, she murmured. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and glowing under the city lights. They walked in silence for a few blocks before Jordan finally said, You're really going to write about it? Ethan stopped, looking at his son. We're not just going to write about it. We're going to tell it exactly the way it happened. Every look, every word, every empty table, and every stain on that tablecloth, Mariah added. Layla smiled faintly for the first time that night. Good. Make them feel it. That night, in their apartment overlooking the Hudson, Ethan sat at his desk. The glow from his laptop screen lit his face as he typed the opening line. We arrived at Benedict's with a confirmed reservation and were told, without apology, that there was no room for us. Mariah leaned over his shoulder, reading silently. When she reached the part about Daniel's last-minute cancellation in the lounge, she put a hand on his arm. Don't hold back. He didn't. Every detail went in the dismissive tone, the eager welcome for the white couple behind them, the empty tables in plain sight. He wrote about the appetizers served like an afterthought, the wine poured without care, the way the manager's smile flickered when he realized who they were. By the time he finished, it wasn't just a review. It was a story, a mirror. When the New York Ledger published it 2 days later, the headline cut straight to the point. Benedict's, a feast for some, a cold shoulder for others. The article went viral within hours. Readers flooded the comments with their own stories of subtle, quiet discrimination in upscale spaces. Some swore they'd never dine at Benedict's again. Others demanded the restaurant address the incident publicly. By the next morning, Benedict's Instagram page was a battlefield of angry comments, one-star reviews, calls for accountability. Daniel issued a statement calling it a misunderstanding. The host was no longer with the restaurant. But the damage was done. And for the Lewises, it was never about revenge. It was about truth. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can serve isn't food, it's the reality that people would rather keep off the menu. The morning after the article went live, Ethan's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Mentions, retweets, emails from colleagues and strangers alike. By 9 a.m., the New York Ledger's editor-in-chief had called to congratulate them. This one's going to be in the top 10 most read pieces of the month, she said. Maybe the year. The comment section's a war zone. I hope you're ready for the blowback. Ethan was. Mariah too. But the kids, that was different. At breakfast, Jordan scrolled through his phone, eyebrows raised. Dad, people are sending me this link like they just discovered you exist. My friends are saying your article is burning down the internet. Layla sipped her orange juice, trying to sound casual. Someone from my class posted a screenshot and said, This is exactly what my family went through. She paused, her voice dropping. Another kid replied, Maybe they just weren't dressed nice enough. Mariah set down her coffee with a soft clink. And there it is. The maybe it's your fault crowd. Ethan leaned forward. Listen to me, those people. They need to believe the system is fair, because if they admit it's not, Then they have to face how much of their comfort is built on someone else's discomfort. That's scary for them. It's easier to blame the target than the shooter. Meanwhile, across town, the mood at Benedict's was anything but calm. Daniel sat in the office, his tie loosened, scrolling through a sea of bad press. Yelp reviews had plummeted overnight. Local news stations were calling for comment. The restaurant's owner, a sharp-tongued woman named Victoria Graves, had been on the phone with him since 7 a.m. "This is a nightmare," she snapped. "We have reservations canceling by the dozen. Corporate clients are pulling events. Do you realize what you've done?" Daniel rubbed his temples. It wasn't intentional. The host made a judgment call, a racist judgment call, according to every headline right now. It was a mistake. It was a pattern, Victoria shot back. "Do you think this is the first time someone's complained about how our host seats people? This is just the first time that someone happened to have a megaphone the size of the damn ledger." Silence. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Here's what you're going to do," Victoria continued. "You're going to call them. Personally. Apologize. Offer them a free dinner, the best table, whatever it takes to shut this down. And if they don't accept?" Daniel asked. "Then you smile for the cameras and make it look like you tried." The call came in while Ethan was answering emails. "Unknown number." "This is Ethan Lewis," he answered. "Mr. Lewis, this is Daniel from Benedict's." The voice was polished again, like the confrontation in the lounge had never happened. "I wanted to personally apologize for the way you and your family were treated. It was unacceptable, and I take full responsibility." Ethan let the silence stretch. "Go on. I'd like to invite you back," Daniel said smoothly. "On the house. Our chef would prepare a special menu for you, the very best we have to offer. We'd like the chance to make things right." Ethan almost laughed. "Daniel, what happened at that podium wasn't a bad plate of pasta. It's not something you can fix with a comped meal. I understand, but no, you don't," Ethan cut in. "And I'm not interested in giving you a chance to stage a photo op for your PR team. My review wasn't about your C-base. It was about your front door. That's where you failed." Daniel's tone faltered. "I hope you'll reconsider." "I won't," Ethan said, and hung up. That afternoon, a local news crew called. Then a podcast. Then a national morning show. The story was no longer just about Benedict's. It had become a flashpoint in a larger conversation about discrimination in luxury spaces. Mariah agreed to one interview, on the condition that it focus on the broader issue, not just their experience. Sitting across from the host in the brightly lit studio, she spoke clearly, without bitterness. This isn't about one restaurant. It's about the countless little ways people are told, "You don't belong here." Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes it's subtle, the delay in seating, the sudden lost reservation, the less desirable table. It's all the same message. Your presence is conditional. When the interview aired, the reaction was swift. Emails poured in from people who'd had similar experiences in restaurants, hotels, boutiques. Some were Black. Some were Latino. Some were Asian. All shared the same underlying story. At Benedict's, the PR machine went into overdrive. They posted a carefully worded apology on Instagram, paired with a photo of the staff standing together in the dining room. The comments section tore it apart. "Looks like a hostage photo. Where's the family you discriminated against? You can't diversity stock photo your way out of this." Victoria hired a diversity consultant to conduct staff training. She scheduled a charity dinner benefiting minority culinary students. The local paper called it a transparent attempt at damage control. In the Lewis household, life didn't slow down. The article was still making rounds online, but the family had their next assignment, an unassuming ramen shop in Queens. "Ironic, huh?" Jordan said as they got ready to leave. "All this drama, and we're just going back to work." "That's the point," Ethan said. "We don't stop. If we only wrote when we were angry, people would dismiss us as bitter. We write when it's good, when it's bad, when it's in between. The consistency is what makes the bad stand out." But not everyone was cheering them on. One afternoon, Mariah checked the mail to find an anonymous letter, typed in all caps, "Stop playing the race card. You just want attention." She didn't show it to the kids. She put it in the drawer with the other letters, the ones that came after similar reviews, the ones that all sounded the same. That night, she told Ethan, "The thing that gets me isn't that they disagree. It's that they want us to shut up about it. That's the part they can't stand, not the racism itself, but that we point it out where everyone can see." Ethan nodded slowly. Sunlight hurts the eyes when you've been living in the dark. 2 weeks later, Benedict's announced that Daniel had stepped down and the restaurant would undergo a period of reflection and restructuring. The news barely made a ripple compared to the original story. By then, the conversation had moved on not because it was over, but because it had spread. Other critics were paying attention. Other customers were speaking up. And in a quiet apartment overlooking the Hudson, Ethan typed the final paragraph for his next column. Some restaurants will tell you they celebrate diversity because they serve food from all over the world. But diversity on a plate means nothing if you can't serve dignity at the door. 3 months passed. The air was sharper now, the kind of crisp New York autumn that made the Hudson sparkle under the afternoon sun. Ethan hadn't thought about Benedict's much lately, at least, not in the day-to-day way. The review had done its work, the storm had raged, and life had moved on. They'd eaten at dozens of other restaurants since then, some exceptional, some forgettable, none of them sparking the same heat as that night. Then, one morning, an email appeared in his inbox. Subject: Benedict's under new management. It was from Victoria Graves. The tone was different this time. Mr. Lewis, my name may be familiar to you. I was the owner of Benedict's during the incident you documented in your review earlier this year. Since then, our management team has changed completely. Daniel is no longer with us. Our front of house has undergone extensive training, and we have brought in new leadership committed to creating a truly inclusive environment. We are inviting you and your family to return. No cameras, no press, no fanfare, to see for yourself whether our words have become actions. Whatever your decision, I want to thank you for holding us accountable. Ethan read it twice, then a third time. It didn't sound like PR spin this time. It sounded human. That evening, over dinner at home, he told Mariah. So, do we go? She asked, twirling her fork absently. Ethan hesitated. Part of me says no. Part of me says, maybe. Not for them. For us. Jordan, now taller and broader in the shoulders, grinned. I say we go and make them sweat. Layla's expression was more cautious. Or we go and they treat us perfectly just because they know it's us, and we'll never know if it's real. Mariah looked at Ethan. We don't go to catch them. We go to see if they've changed. If they haven't, we'll know. If they have, that matters, too. 2 weeks later, on a cool Friday evening, they stepped through the glass doors of Benedict's again. The lobby looked the same golden light, the same smell of rosemary and lamb, but the energy was different. The host, a black woman in her 30s, greeted them with a warm smile before they even gave their name. Good evening. Welcome to Benedict's. Do you have a reservation? Lewis. Party of 4, Ethan said. Her smile widened. Yes, Mr. Lewis. Your table is ready. Please, follow me. No hesitation. No sideways glances. No checking the iPad twice. She led them past the lounge, still narrow, still near the kitchen, and into the heart of the main dining room. The table waiting for them was by the window, overlooking the city lights. Crisp linens. Perfectly polished silverware. A small vase of fresh lilies at the center. Their server arrived moments later, introducing himself and describing the evening's specials with an ease that felt genuine, not rehearsed. He asked about allergies, preferences, even whether they'd like to pace the meal slowly. Mariah caught Ethan's eye across the table. Neither of them said it out loud, but they were both thinking the same thing. This is different. The food was impeccable, not just in flavor, but in care. The beet carpaccio from their first visit was now sliced with surgical precision, dressed with a hint of orange zest that made the flavors sing. The sea bass arrived hot, its skin crisp, resting on a bed of saffron risotto that melted on the tongue. Between courses, the new manager, a soft-spoken man named Raphael, stopped by. I won't take much of your time, he said, hands clasped. I just want to say that what you wrote. It hurt, but it also helped. You forced us to see the gap between who we thought we were and who we really were. And you gave us a chance to close it. Ethan studied him for a moment. There was no defensiveness in his tone, no subtle edge. Just humility. Change takes work, Ethan said. Raphael nodded. It does. And it's ongoing. By dessert, the mood at the table was lighter than it had been in months. Layla was laughing at one of Jordan's terrible puns. Mariah was savoring her coffee like it was the first one she'd had in years. When the check came, Raphael returned not with a leather folder, but with a small envelope. This is not a bill, he said. Dinner is on us tonight. Not because we're trying to buy your favor, but because we want this meal to be a gift to thank you for holding us accountable. Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on Benedict's stationery. We can't change the past, but we can choose the future we serve. We hope you'll see this is the start of something better. They left the restaurant into the crisp night air, the city humming around them. For a few blocks, they walked in comfortable silence, the kind that comes after a long, honest conversation. Finally, Layla spoke. So, did they change? Ethan thought about it. I think they're trying. And sometimes, trying is where change starts. Mariah slipped her arm through his. Trying, and listening when someone tells you you've failed. Jordan grinned. Guess we gave them more than just a bad review. Ethan smiled faintly. We gave them a mirror. What they do with it, that's up to them. Back home, Ethan sat at his desk, the city lights flickering outside the window. He opened a blank document and began to type. 3 months ago, Benedict's told my family there was no room for us. Last night, they proved there was, and more than that, they proved that a closed door can open again, if you're willing to admit it should have never been closed in the first place. He paused, looking at that sentence. It wasn't just about Benedict's. It was about every door, in every place, that had ever been shut on someone because of who they were. And maybe, just maybe, it was about the doors that could still open. The article would run the following week. Not as a review, but as a reflection, a reminder that calling out injustice isn't the end of the story. Sometimes, it's the beginning. As he typed the final line, Ethan could hear Mariah in the kitchen, humming softly, and the kids laughing over something on TV. He smiled, fingers still on the keys. The real measure of a place isn't how it greets you when you first arrive. It's whether it learns to greet you better the next time. That was the ending he sent to the New York Ledger. The next morning, it was already making the rounds online. Some people still doubted Benedict's sincerity. Others were moved by the idea that a place could learn and grow. The debate didn't bother Ethan. The point was never to please everyone. The point was to tell the truth. And the truth, he knew, was that change is messy, imperfect, and worth fighting for. And for the Lewises, the fight wasn't over. There would be other restaurants, other doors, other moments when someone decided they didn't belong. But there would also be other chances for people, for places, for the world to prove they could do better. And that, Ethan thought as he closed his laptop, was worth writing about. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.